Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, today we're going to talk about leadership within your company, your business, your team, but real leadership, not just controlling your employees or being able to press their buttons, making them robots, truly connecting with your team. And he's got a lot of insight on that. This is the game changer when you're responsible for running an organization, whether it's your own or you're at the top of a large company or corporation. He is a certified executive coach and founder of Coaching for Relevance. Randy Swaim is back with us. Hey, Randy, how's it going?
Hey, good. Good to see you here, man. Good to hear.
Yeah, it's great to have you back here. And you're all about leadership, techniques for connecting with teams. And do you find in your journeys that a lot of C-suite individuals, upper level management are really just about controlling their employees, not really connecting with them inside?
Well, I'm not going to say all or nothing. There is an element of that into a lot of us in our society
Sure.
and in our businesses and things like that. But I remember 2 weeks ago when I was on the show there, we talked about the fact how so many people who are kind of the head of a team or something sort of inspire the emotions within their people, but it's so that they can control them. They can sort of knock their people off center a little bit and just control them. And there are some people that do that, but it's not about that. It's about connecting with your people in a way that they're part of you. And I'll kind of share a quote here in just a second, but there is some of that. And one of the things I'll do is I'll just mention a couple of little insights from my autobiography. I think everybody that saw the show last week knows my autobiography was published a week and a half ago.
Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you. I'm humbled by it. I'm actually very humbled and appreciative in a lot of the feedback that I've been given with people that have read it or in the process of reading it. So making a difference, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, we'll mention one or two things on that. And then what I will do is I'll give you one kind of example of how one person changed what they did. And it was kind of a, surprising result from her boss. So I shared that on the show yesterday when I was with Charles Smith and everything, but I'll share that here. Just as one example of what we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to get into examples now?
Okay, let's go ahead and do that really quick. And keep in mind, the big thing on this is that it is not just about you manipulating your people. It's not about you knocking them off center so that I can control them, and all that kind of stuff. That's not leadership. That's the dysfunctional, dictatorial, control freakish stuff. And that unfortunately causes your people to not believe in each other and believe in you. And it minimizes the radical results that could happen. And what I do is I'll give you this key quote. And this is, I'll tell you who it is because I shared this quote on my IMX thing this morning. Because when I saw it, I went, you know what, I'm going to share that because this is the heart of who I've become throughout my journey, and also one of the big things that has become a part of me, and is why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I'll just let you know that the person that made this quote was a guy named Steve Keating. Okay, and here's the exact quote, and it is totally 100% true. Kind of thing. And it's just simply this quote: authentic leaders don't force compliance. They earn commitment, unquote. And you know what? There is so much truth to that. It's not about you playing dictatorial games, and it's not about you pointing fingers and threatening or telling somebody, well, I'm your boss, you better listen to me. You do that and you're dysfunctional and you're not getting it done. And I will tell you that, and I'll just give you just a couple of quick examples here from my autobiography that most people have probably heard me say this before, but through my life's journey, there's a couple of times where amazing things happened that got me past a point that I would have, when you look back on it, there's no reason that people should have done that. And one time I'll just give you one quick example, but and I think I may have shared this with you too, sir. But when I graduated from college, I had to graduate on my 25th birthday, and going into the last summer session, I had to get 4 more credit hours to officially graduate. And by the way, that was the last time I could be in school because my 25th birthday was at the end of that semester in June. And it was kind of funny because the professor, I took a physics class that I knew I could do well in, and I got a B plus in it, and a graduate level imaginary calculus course, Math 501. And the professor had come from a culture that basically was a high power distant culture. You know, you didn't just do things and all this kind of stuff. And he had a reputation across the university where he did not curve grades at all. Well, the day before my 25th birthday, well, actually the week over there, when I took the final exam, I mean, I was just about out of energy of everything. You know, I was basically given all I could for 3.5 years. And I took the final exam, and I sort of figured that I might have gotten a C on the final exam, but if I got a D, all dreams fell apart. And to make a long story short, after the final exam, I went over to his, because this is back before the internet, you know, long before the internet kind of thing. I went over to his office to see if the grades were posted. And I went over there about 3 times a day, and no grades were posted. The day before my 25th birthday, I went over there about 5 times, and no grades posted. I went over there. The last time I went over there was like 5:45 in the afternoon, and no grades posted. And I stood there, and my chin just went like this, because all the lights were out, doors were locked, and all this. And I sat there, and the words actually came out of my mouth, and it said, "What do I do now?" Because the dream is dead. I said, "What do I do now?" And I wasn't crying, but boy, I was about that far short of it. And about 6 seconds after those words came out of my mouth, I heard something, and I looked up, and who came around the corner but this professor? And he walked, and this is actually in my autobiography. I tell this story. He walked up and he said, "May I help you?" And I shook his hand. I said, "Yes, sir. I'm Randy. I'm in your Math 501 class." And I shared with him, I said, "I'm just wondering if you have the final exams graded and all that." And he said, "No." He said, "I'm planning on doing that this weekend." And I told him what I was doing going into the Air Force and all of this, but I had to be commissioned tomorrow. And I said, "Sir, I'm not asking for anything I don't deserve, but is there any chance I can just get you to grade mine real quick before the day's over so that I know?" And this professor that didn't curve grades or anything ever, he looked at me like this, and his eyes were fixated on me for about 5 or 6 seconds. And then he did this. His head just started to nod. And then he looked at me. He said, "If you have plans like that, I will give you a C." And I went, "Sir?" He said, "If you have plans like that, I will give you a C." I said, "Sir, thank you." And I called the ROTC detachment and told them. And guess what? On my 25th birthday, my sister and my mother pinned second lieutenant bars on my shoulders after I took the oath of commissioning.
Wow.
But the bottom line is, nothing about that was my attempt to control him. Nothing about that was me trying to tell him what to do or play manipulative games. And his response was not because of anything like that. There was something about, I guess, what he experienced for a couple of minutes with me that he truly believed, and he truly wanted to do it. And he did. And my career has been great on that. But you know what? Leadership is when you're really talking about how you are absolutely connecting with your people. and getting the magic results out there. It's not about you just preparing them to listen to you so that you can look for the factors and tell them what to do. No, it's developing within them the ability to see what they didn't see before and to make the right choices that get your team to dramatic results. And I'll just share one other little quick story, because this is the story that I shared with Charles yesterday. But the girl that I was dating, this was, oh boy, this was 1997, so about 30 years ago, kind of thing. And she worked for a big time corporate organization. Don't remember, it's been so long, I don't exactly remember which one. But she called me at work one day, and she was part of a group, and their boss was somebody that was really sort of didn't pay a lot of attention to people, was just this dictatorial, finger pointing person, and things like that. And nobody really wanted to go talk to him a lot and everything on his team. Well, she was in charge of 4 different areas for this one special operation that was going on, and of a finish line on one aspect of it at one stage. One of them was not done there at that time. And she called me when I was at work, and we chatted for a second. She said, I don't want to tell him this is going to be so bad, all this sort of stuff. And what I did is I said, well, let me ask you a question. And she said, what? I said, what's needed? What do you need to do in this situation? And she had to think about it for a minute or two. And then she said, well, I guess what I got to do is this, and, make all this happen and all this. And then I said, well, let me ask you something. Did you just tell me that you have a plan? And she's with kind of surprise and shock in her voice. She said, well, yeah, I guess I do. And I said, when you go talk to him, why don't you tell him your plan? And she said, oh, wow. She said, well, here goes nothing. She hung up and went to talk to the boss and tell him about it. She called me back about 8 minutes later, and she was blown away. And she said, you're not going to believe what happened. I said, what? She said, I went in and I told them, but like you said, instead of just telling him that they didn't get this ready quick enough, instead of doing that, I told them what my plan was. And he said, this boss, and this was very different from what he had ever done before. This boss looked at me and said, okay, thank you. Thanks, Norma. And then she said, okay, sir. And she started to walk out, and she heard him say, Norma. And she stopped, and she turned around and looked at him, and he looked at her, and he just nodded his head. He said, Norma, thank you. Thank you. And she just said, my pleasure, and walked out and got on about the business with the job. But you know what? Her example and what I shared with my example, those things do not happen when you're just threatening, pointing fingers, manipulating, playing games like that. That's not leadership. That is the dysfunctional nature of control freak people. And I'll tell you, when people in your team are experiencing that from you or from each other, guess what? It's going to kill the synergy. It's going to kill the belief. It's going to kill the teamwork, so that in a rapidly changing environment, they can reach radical results. It's going to put all of that to the short range. But that's an aspect of true leadership. It happens when people basically become familiar with who you are, and it's not just making them laugh so that they just kind of want to be with you. No, it's just something about the way you're interacting in sort of an ongoing way, where they believe in your belief in them, but they also believe in their. And like I said, with this quote, it's a good quote because, like I said, it's authentic leaders don't force compliance. You do that, you're not being a leader. You're being a dictator. You're being a narcissist. You're being a dysfunctional one for your team. But leaders don't force compliance. They earn commitment. In other words, they create an environment. They create a synergy. They create a culture within your team where people want to do it. and be there. And that is a key aspect of leadership. If you go with all those other things we've actually talked about for the last 2 weeks, it's very dysfunctional and it's not getting it done. But if you understand the difference of it, amazing things can happen. So that's just one thing I wanted to share this week, is sort of a dovetail out of what we talked about that. And like I said, it's a great quote from Steve Keating. Authentic leaders don't force compliance, they earn commitment.
I love the way that sounds. And it's also loyalty. You
It
get
is.
loyalty from your team, and it's rampant these days is quiet quitting, where
Yeah.
they've already checked out. They're showing up for the paycheck. They're doing their job bare minimum. They're already checked out. They have no interest. They're not vested in the company because I'm sure the leadership is a dictatorship. I want to ask you,
Sure.
when you were 25
Yep.
and you were waiting for the grades and you saw that professor in the hallway, do you think what worked in your favor was you being so genuine and so authentic at that moment, and he picked up on that?
And also he and I think one of the things, and I don't know, because obviously we have never talked since then, kind of thing, but I will say this, that I think what you said is a big part of it, but also he was very much aware of how I was not trying to negotiate with him. I was
Right.
not trying to manipulate him. I was not trying to whatever. I
Sure.
was going to let him make the call. And I think all of those come together. See, that's what real leadership does. If you're just playing manipulative and dictatorial control freak games, you're squashing everybody's belief in you. And I did it in such a way that there was something about his experience of me that day that he that it just made him do something that he might not have otherwise done. And in my autobiography, there's a couple of other examples of how I did that with different situations and all that, and also how I helped lead that with groups that I was the leader of down the road. And so, but again, it's about the experience. It's not about you kind of firing them up. It's not about you generating their emotions so you can kind of control them and all that. It's about connecting with them in such a way that they want to be committed to you. And that's, to a certain extent, what he was sort of in that one situation. He was sort of experiencing that just a little bit. And same thing with my girlfriend in that other example. When she went to talk to her boss, she did it, and she didn't just say, well, they're not doing this, I don't know what we're going to do, or anything like that. What she did is she said, this is the kind of a momentary struggle right now, but here's what I'm going to do about it. And you know what? She helped him experience something different in her that was going into a positive direction and stuff. And when you're the leader, guess what? You got to help it be such a way that your people experience that. And it doesn't mean just playing the control freak games. It means really doing it in such a way that, again, they want to be committed to you, not because you're forcing them, but because they want to be. And that's what it means by earning commitment from your team, that they want to be a part of what you're doing, not playing games, not any of that other stuff. So it's a real key aspect when you're talking about, the narcissistic and the dysfunctional aspect of playing games and all that kind of stuff. You're not coming across as that, dysfunctional, control freakish Yahoo, but you're really doing it in such a way that they want to be a part of what you're doing, and they want to make it wild and amazingly awesome.
What do you think is the out of everything, if you had to pinpoint the number one, number two most important things that need to get done to get that earned loyalty and commitment, what would it be? Would it be, honesty, authenticness?
Well, honesty could be, you're screwing up. Well, you know what? No, that's not what you want to do. A lot of it has to do with and I would simply say a key part of this is how you're interacting with your people. I think I shared this on a show a long time ago, and again, it's one of the ones in the autobiography. But I had to do a disciplinary thing with one of my the teammates that work for me and everything. But you know what? The way I did it was amazingly beneficial for him and the team. My girlfriend that time, when she had to communicate this one struggle right here, she didn't come in and say, "Hey, you know what? They're doing this. I got to go over there." And it's not that, but it's how they experience you. It's, you know what? Here's what we're going to do, and you know what? What do you think you can do? A lot of times, if you talk to your people and you ask them questions like, "Well, what's your experience of the challenge in this? In your experience, what do you think is standing in the way?" "Oh, maybe this." "You know what? I understand that. So how can you get through that?" And a lot of it is a coaching perspective, but the big thing is in how are you instilling their experience in you, in such a way that they want to be a part of it, and not just to play superficial games, but they experience you differently than a lot of managers out there are doing, because it's not about you just playing legal games. I mean, yeah, are there some times where you got to do that? Yeah, but you can do that in a vindictive way, but you can also do that in a very team-oriented, synergistic, positive way. And how are you coming across?
We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Hypothetical. How would you handle this based on the principles that we've talked about, the real leadership? Somebody on the team makes an error. They either had a miscommunication, didn't understand. They spent $4,000 more than they should have on this project. They're remorseful. They made a mistake. How do you handle that as their leader or boss?
Well, one thing you got to do is, first and foremost, okay, you got to find out kind of what their experience was as this was beginning to develop and happen. And then what I do is, going forward, what are you going to be able to do to not make that happen again? What are you going to do? What do you need to do to become more aware of when that struggle is sort of coming on the scene for a minute? And how are you going to do that? And depending on the situation, there's a lot of different varying situations out there, but in a general sense, even if you're talking applause, or if you're talking about a degree of discipline, correction, and all this kind of stuff, how you do that is key. Because I'll tell you what, you can come across and say, "Well, you screwed this up. You just botched this whole thing up. We're not going to be successful because you're on the team." That's not the key. A lot of it is, what did you learn? And guess what? How are we as a team going to ensure that doesn't happen again? And what do you guys as a team members need to do a little bit different, working together? And so there's a lot of questions like that you can do that in a positive way, even if it came up with a negative result initially. And so all of those are just sort of aspects about it, that when you're talking about leadership, it's not just that dysfunctional control freak thing. It's not that thing where just pointing fingers and threatening and you didn't do your job, or whatever, that kind of thing, because a lot of people in today's world are just taught to just do nothing but make excuses if it doesn't work out right. Right. And you know what? That's dysfunctional.
Yep. But as a leader, you created it.
To a certain extent, you're exactly right. And so a lot of that aspect where you're connecting with your people and building that awareness, that doesn't happen at the point of attack. It happens in your journey as you're going through as a team. And that's a good point that I have mentioned before, that when I train and certify jet pilots, A lot of times, one of the things I'll do is I'll kind of ask down then, and I've said this to executives too, looking down the road, what's the one factor that might come on the scene that you did not expect? And when that happens, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to know what's right? How are you going to be aware and all that? And that's part of this interaction. But you know what? If you're using that sort of interactive togetherness coaching approach in what you're doing, your people tend to gravitate to you and commit to the team. If you're just coming through as that dictatorial, control freak, narcissistic thing, guess what? Things go crazy and you're not getting what you want done. So it's just some things to think about when you're talking about, like I said, the last couple of weeks where we were talking about the dysfunctional versus the connecting with your people. That takes it to a little bit of a deeper level of doing it in such a way that your team almost, at the end of the day, they take their hat off and they go, "Oh, I'm so glad to be here," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's and it's not just because you pat them on the back, but it's because they experience their growth, the team's growth, the working together, the synergy, the possibility of what could come on scene that is just going to blow their minds in a positive way. And we can get there, kind of thing. And so when you're talking about this aspect of leadership, your leaders and your people, and as you're trying to grow people in your team, never let them go to this dysfunctional, dictatorial, control freak, junkie mindset, because that's going to destroy the team down the road.
Randy, you always have a great way to look at these situations and circumvent them or prepare for them, or repair them, depending if you've already done
there is some of that. Yeah.
There is some of that. How do we find you? Your website, is it as simply as going to coachingforrelevance.com?
Yep. It's coachingforrelevance.com. And if you go to Coaching for Relevance, by the way, I will just share this very quickly. You go to the homepage, and about 2 to 3 seconds after you're on the homepage, the banner for my autobiography comes up, and you can click it off, or if you want to, there's a little thing down there that says get your copy, and you can click on that, and it takes you right to the Amazon page where you can purchase a copy if you want. But at the bottom of the homepage on my website, it has the email, and it has my cell phone. I don't do a lot of sales pitches. I'm not going to do that. Now, if somebody calls me and they have a need, yeah, we'll come up with something. But I don't do sales pitches. I connect with people, and
Sure.
And that's what I do.
You have such an amazing history from being in the air, flying planes, aircraft, teaching that, and also coaching. Book's amazing. So check it out, coachingforrelevance.com. And Randy, great having you on again. Missed you.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll look forward to being back on with you guys again. So I appreciate it, man.
Excellent. All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.